Hello and welcome to the Let That Shift Go podcast. I'm Noel.
And I'm Lena.
And this is where we talk about the good, the bad, and all the shift in between.
We'll just talk mad shift.
Let's get into it. And on this week's episode, we're going to talk about conscious uncoupling, evolving your relationship with compassion.
That'll be fun.
Yeah, but first let's get into these skin deep cards.
Okay.
You want to go first or me?
You go first.
Okay. My question is, if you could go back in time and give yourself advice about our relationship, what would it be and when?
Oh, man. It would have been way earlier, and it would have been really asking you about, like, what was it like for you in our family? How was it like being my little brother? Or how was it growing up with mom? Or, what was it like not living with dad?
What's your story? Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, because that's when the thing we just took for granted that we knew each other's story.
Yeah.
And we understood each other's experience, and we absolutely did not.
It's crazy how wrong we were.
My gosh.
The assumptions that we made.
Yeah, it was shocking.
Yeah.
When I said the story I've always told myself is this.
Yeah.
And you were like, no, that's like what I've gone 40 something years and that's been the story, and it wasn't. And it was such a painful story to hold.
Yeah.
And to realize like that it was unnecessary in some ways.
Well, what's a realistic age to do that at? Because when you're a kid, you're just not, emotionally capable of processing all those things. You may not be aware of, the depths of what's going on or why you are. It really takes time to kind of get to that place before you can acknowledge those things. And I think this younger generation now is much more capable.
Yeah.
Even they're way more, I don't know what you want to say, woke or
coherent
and aware about these types of topics than we were growing up.
Yeah, this was not something ever brought up for us. It was really through our own pain.
Yeah.
That's the only thing that really, brought it out, was being in our own pain. So I would say, how old should you be? Today, years old.
Yeah.
That's how old you should be. So whatever year you are today, that's the day you should start asking your siblings, like, hey, like, what was it like for you? And you might be very surprised to find out it was completely different than what you thought, completely different from your experience.
Yeah.
Because our parents are different when they have us. They evolve also as human beings. And so when they had me and when they had you, and they were different people.
Yeah.
And so we're being raised by different parents, actually. They're in their own evolution. So yeah, just don't take for granted that you know exactly what your siblings' experience has been. And do so with compassion, noticing if you have judgment already, like, oh, well, you had it so much better because you were the favorite.
Yeah, see, there's a lot of that kind of thing.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And in their mind, they're like, you think I was the favorite? So just have a conversation, without judgment, with deep curiosity.
Yeah.
Yeah. So.
Okay.
Yeah.
I like that one.
All right. My question is, what do you think I should let go of and why?
Oh, what do you think? What do I think you should let go of? I think your fear of doing things physically. When we talked about a couple of weeks ago how you lack the ability to go first with physical things that are challenging.
Mm-hmm. You tell me now at 52 that I should just go ahead.
Well, it doesn't have to be the wild stuff.
Okay.
But I'm just thinking to some of that secondary trauma that we talked about from your flight nurse experience and seeing all that stuff and that made you afraid to do things.
Yeah.
Just maybe working on letting
go of fear.
Letting go of the fear of those things and keeping you from keeping you staying it's making you stay small, I think, in some ways.
Shoot, I think it shouldn't just apply to the physical.
Yeah.
I think it should just be letting go of fear, period.
Well, you're pretty good at the rest of those, but
not always.
Yeah.
Like putting myself out there and we're putting ourselves out here now, but that was a process.
Yeah.
I do secretly dream of being a hip hop dancer. And so maybe.
Still?
Yeah, I still do. So maybe I let go of my fear of not being able to do that.
Take a dance class.
I'm looking for a hip hop dance instructor. If anybody would like to apply, please contact me. Anyway, private lessons first.
All right. Well, let's get into this topic here.
Okay.
It's a topic that's often overlooked, but incredibly powerful.
Yeah.
Conscious uncoupling is the idea that not every relationship is meant to last forever.
Yep.
And when it comes to an end, it doesn't have to be bitter or painful. In fact, in some endings can be positive, creating growth and space for something new.
Yeah. That's, you know what, when we've talked about conscious uncoupling, I have often thought of how Armando and I, how we broke up, how we were heading towards divorce, and how we'd gotten to that point where it's like, you know what, you are no longer your best self with me, and I am not either. Like, who I am as a human being is making you sort of miserable, and vice versa. And so I think we just got to this point of like, we weren't even fighting anymore. It was just like, I love this person. I want them to be happy. I just don't think that I'm the person that can do that. And I'm going to have to empty myself of me in order to do that for them.
Yeah.
And so in some ways, a lot of what we did was conscious uncoupling, although we did not have like the intentional statements, that now we're seeing with John Gottman, with all of their research and the research by, is her name Catherine?
Yeah.
Catherine Woodward Thomas, and she authored Conscious Uncoupling, right? It wasn't something I'd ever heard of. In fact, the first time I heard of conscious uncoupling was with Gwyneth Paltrow.
Yeah, and Chris Martin.
Yeah, and I was like, what the heck is that?
They were the ones that kind of, they were a celebrity couple that kind of bring it and popularity to it. And it was like, oh God, what is she doing?
Yeah, yeah.
And I didn't pay too much attention to it back then. It was just like, this is some new way to be, I don't know.
Like a bougie way of saying we broke up.
Yeah.
And now it's like, it makes perfect sense. It was way ahead of its time, obviously. Yeah. And there's just so much more to it than, a nice breakup. I mean, I think that there's some specific language to use and a way to approach, the ending of a relationship in whatever form it was. I mean, for Armando and I, it was the ending of a relationship as it was.
Well, in conscious uncoupling, they talk about, it's something that was a new concept to me, that just because a relationship comes to an end doesn't mean that it failed.
Right.
Because it's coming to an end.
Yeah.
And there's room for a new beginning. And I always thought like if you're getting a divorce, you failed.
Yeah, that's
a big misnomer, I think.
Yeah. And I think it's one that stops us from really being able to move on in some ways, right? Because if you have this thing about like, this means I failed, then you're taking it so personal. And that is it's not a good way to kind of go into it.
Yeah.
It may stop you from actually taking the steps and being able to step back and say, is this the healthiest place for me or not? And how do I approach this?
And it's important to understand that it doesn't always lead to a divorce. In some cases, yours, that portion of your relationship came to an end and something new had to grow.
Yeah. And it reminds me of the statement by Catherine where she said, when you know how to consciously uncouple, you know how to complete a relationship in a way that leaves you feeling whole rather than broken.
Yeah.
And I would say that with Armando and I, there was, I think, a big piece of me that I actually felt more authentic to myself in taking that step, even though I was terrified, and we both were.
Yeah.
It was kind of like I was broken in the relationship. We both were. We were like
individually
two broken people trying to just bump into each other constantly. And honestly, that was our best hope at becoming whole, is to become, whole in ourselves, So that really led to really the relationship we have now.
Yeah.
Whether or not we would have gotten back together or not, at least we were ending it in a way that we were both caring for each other.
Yeah.
And so that's when we were looking at this subject, I was like, who do I know that has done it? And it was like, I feel like we did that.
Yeah. I was trying to think of somebody. I was like, man, I've seen so much of this, the nasty divorces, bitter.
Yeah. We grew up with those.
Yeah.
That's mostly what you see.
Yeah.
Is just pain, thrashing around, kind of, throwing shame on each other, throwing shade on each other constantly. And really that's just coming from a place of pain.
Yeah. I heard somebody say once, any relationship that does not end in peace never ends.
Ooh, say that again.
Yeah. Any relationship that does not end in peace never ends.
Yeah.
Because there's a constant struggle. There's resentment. There's all these things that you never let go of, and you can't move forward because you're holding.
It's like you're tethered.
Yeah. In some way, you're holding on to that and you haven't let it go.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. That makes a lot of sense. Like you don't give yourself a shot.
Yeah.
Unless you can move away from it from a place of neutrality.
Yeah.
Somehow. I think that's one thing we talk about often on this podcast is getting to a place of being neutral. If you're going to approach any conversation, you've got to get yourself to a place where you feel neutral.
Yeah. Becoming the observer.
Yeah.
Yeah. Stepping back a little bit.
Stepping back from the situation, seeing yourself not exactly in it in a way that makes it feel so personal or, just painful. And being able to look at, in the concept of a relationship is both sides, being able to see your side, but also being able to see the other person's side from a place of non-attachment.
Yeah.
Where you're not making it mean something about you,
That's the most difficult part, not taking it personal.
Oh, man.
We say it all the time, but it's so difficult to separate yourself from that.
Well, especially in close relationships.
Yeah.
So what do you think are some of the ways that the steps to a mindful separation?
Well, what is conscious uncoupling? You know what I mean? Conscious uncoupling is a mindful approach to ending a relationship with respect and intention.
Yeah.
So I think it's about, having clearer communication.
And I think it's about not about avoiding the pain, but choosing not to let the pain define the relationship or how it ends. So it's not going to be a pain-free thing.
Yeah.
But, you can choose for the relationship not to end on that painful.
Yeah. You still need to honor what was shared.
Yeah.
Even though you're moving in separate directions.
Yeah.
And that's an important piece because it's not, I think part of it is understanding that it's not a failure.
Yeah.
It's just that this part of our relationship is coming to an end.
I think that's the only way that you can allow for healing, for closure, and for some way for it to benefit everybody who's involved. If you think about, it's not just the two of you, like if you have children, what is the benefit of having two parents that are fighting or two parents that are talking badly about one another? That just damages the child.
Yeah.
So if anything, if there was a reason, if you do have kids or you have, things like that, family involved, this is one of the things that could probably greatly improve the quality of the relationship moving forward, whether or not you're together.
And that's why Catherine Woodward, she talked about it in her book, the reason why she came up with this. And she read many different books, but she kind of put this together because she was going through a divorce.
Okay.
And her husband really had their child in mind in terms of their daughter was the most important thing, just to make sure that what they were doing didn't affect her.
Yeah.
And so that was
the
intention.
motivation.
That was their motivation to begin this.
Yeah. That's a good motivation. Think about how when we were younger, that was it. When you're the child in the middle of two parents who are splitting, you often feel like this need to choose one side or the other. And I think the most healthy thing you can do is let that child, they don't need to do that because neither of you is forcing them to do that.
Yeah.
That you respect their parent and vice versa. Now, this doesn't always apply. If this is an abusive relationship or there's something really going on that it's not always possible to have two people who can come to the table as adults and act as an adult and speak intentionally. Like, we understand that is not always the case. But if you can get to a place with this person that you at one point loved and respected, like thinking about what brought you together and remembering that part, maybe it can build a bridge to you being able to find your way through to the other side of something, coming to an end in the way that it is.
Yeah. Conscious uncoupling is a way to release resentment, transform negative energy, and create positive closure.
Yeah. Positive closure.
Yeah. I think if you're not dealing with those things, they're just going to linger and you're going to have that, resentment still building in that relationship. Of course, you're not going to, if you were able to fix all of these things, you would probably stay married. But at least having open communication between parents that doesn't affect the kids, I should say, is the overall goal, I think.
Yeah. And you never know. With Armando and I, with our story, like we totally thought it was the end. It was the end of the relationship as it was. I can tell you that relationship, that we had to die as it existed in order for anything else to come. So it did leave a bridge that was still attainable because there was friendship and there was mutual respect, and we had treated each other with respect.
And you were supporting each other.
We were like literally supporting each other. I think I came over and decorated his apartment.
Sounds like you, yeah.
I did. And then he came and painted my townhouse.
Yeah.
He charged me for it, by the way, but he did paint it.
Hey, hopefully he gave you cost.
He gave me cost, but it still, I thought it was crazy too much. I was like, are you kidding me? Why? I would never pay that. And he's like, this is what it costs. And so I did pay for it. But, you know, it was like a kindness we were doing for each other. So
that was an important step, though, to be honest and charge you, because that, you know what I mean? I think that's a clear boundary of setting up things that don't push you backwards and build resentment. Charging for what the time, the energy exchange.
Yeah, because it was
important.
no longer his responsibility.
Yeah.
You know, but he was doing me a solid.
Yeah.
So, I mean,
if you were adult enough to step away from the relationship, you also have to be adult enough to
pay for your paint job.
Pay for your paint job and release his obligation to do it
for free.
For free. Yeah.
I'm no longer your wife. So
And you know, this isn't only about, I mean, it's directed more towards romantic relationships, but this type of method could be used for friendships.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, any relationship.
Any relationship, yeah.
Anything where you formed a relationship and now you're saying that it's probably in the best interest of both people, or, you know, a group of people.
Yeah.
To let that come to an end.
A respectful end.
Respectful end, compassionate end, and be able to honor what it has been, but honor that you both, or, you know, whomever's involved needs to move forward, and to do that in a way that's supportive of all parties.
I think I can think of a couple of friendships that I've been able to kind of walk away with, and I still feel good about the relationship.
Yeah.
What we built or what we did together.
Yeah.
But we're not necessarily friends in this moment. But it was an extremely important time in my life, and but that kind of we're just no longer friends anymore. But it was able to come to like a respectful end. Yeah.
Yeah. I think it's
mutually kind of like, we're just
you know what?
not on the same wavelength or whatever it is.
It's still hard, I think, uncomfortable. But I think the hard part or the uncomfortable part is if you feel like they're going to take it personal or you are. And at some point, it's just being able to have compassion for both sides, like being able to see from the perspective of both sides.
Yeah. And remembering that not all relationships are meant to last a lifetime.
Yeah. Some are for a season, some are for a reason.
You say that a lot. So,
well, let's talk about some key steps to navigate a mindful, you know, compassionate separation.
Okay.
So whether you're ending a romantic relationship, friendship, shifting family dynamics, I mean, these steps can help you do it with grace and with healing. That's the goal, grace and healing. So the first one is open communication. So that is expressing your needs and your desires for the future, but you're not blaming the other person. It's like, you make me feel this, therefore, or you are doing this, that's why I can't be in this anymore.
Yeah.
Right? But just really instead, you know, maybe you say, I value the time we've shared, you know, but I feel like it's time to move forward, and it's going to be in different ways. And I would love for us to support each other through this transition.
Yeah, I think it's important to set positive intentions for the separation. Focus on mutual respect and personal growth rather than resentment. You know.
You ain't getting anywhere focusing on resentment.
No, I mean, because
really
if you're moving on, those are things
heard.
that you got to let go of.
Yeah.
You got to pick your battles here. You know, because you're not doing this to solve every little infraction that you hold resentment towards. It's really focusing on the key things. Yeah. And appreciating and honoring things that you have had.
Yep.
You know?
I think it goes back to what you were saying about if you don't do this, the relationship never ends.
Yeah, any relationship that does not end in peace never ends. Yeah.
All right. So resentment does not equal peace.
Yeah.
So that is never the path. You're going to be the one kind of holding on to that poison, drinking it, wishing the other person would get sick type of thing. So you don't want to end with resentment. And there's a lot of studies that show that these positive intentions in difficult conversations can help reduce the emotional tension, you know, and increase the likelihood of having an amicable resolution.
Yeah.
So honoring shared experiences as well. Just honoring the memories and experiences you've had in the relationship. I think that's a really important part. There's a reason why you chose to be in the relationship with this friend or with this partner.
Mm-hmm.
And I think there is space to be able to honor that, I think that it's a way out of resentment.
Yeah. And both parties got to feel closure and respect,
Yeah.
That's what you're trying to get.
Both parties.
Both parties. There's no winners and losers.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Celebrating the good times, like we said, transform the separation from feeling like a failure. And instead, it's a meaningful chapter in your life. There's always a reason why we go into relationship with people, and if you can harvest the lesson, that is kind of like, it's like alchemy.
Mm-hmm.
You can
Why is this happening for me?
Why is this happening for me? Why did I meet you? What did I learn from being in this relationship with you? Whether or not it was painful or whatever.
Yeah. And usually you're asking this in the middle of the suck, like, why? Yeah. But
yeah. And you know what? Ending up it could lead to a lot of guilt and sadness, anger. I think you have to really let yourself know that those emotions are going to come up. Leave space for that. Because I think that's a natural process of something transitioning too.
Yeah, this isn't about emotional bypassing.
No,
you got to acknowledge them as a part of the healing process.
Yeah, the only way out is through. So
yeah.
And really realizing it doesn't make you a bad person,
No, it actually makes you a good person because you're being honest and you're helping the other person.
You're honoring both of yourself and the other person by being honest.
Yeah, and it's a good time to lean into your support system,
Friends, family, therapist. Yep.
And finding your own self-soothing tools.
Not doom scrolling though.
Yeah, no.
No, because just think if you start looking up breakups and all, then you're going to get more of that.
The algorithms speak heavy when you're in a breakup for some reason.
All you'll get is Billie Eilish on the radio.
Oh man. Yeah.
One of the authors, John Gottman, that we talked about, he had a lot of great like communication tools for being able to navigate. And one of the things when we were doing this is I'm thinking whenever I listen to something and it's something that's striking a chord with me, maybe like we're talking about ending relationships right now, I like to have real examples of how to do it, because I would say that, speaking in this way to someone and being able to go, let's consciously move through the ending of this relationship it's not easy. No, and we don't always have the language.
You got to do it in a way that doesn't create defensive,ness, because that's what I'm guilty of. I always want to defend myself.
Oh boy, yeah.
And when I go into that, oh man, it's guilt and shame come up, So I think approaching it in a way that doesn't create that defensiveness.
Well, he talks about softening your tone.
I statements, really too. Yeah.
I statements as opposed to you statements. I statements I love because you are having to take radical responsibility.
Yeah.
For whatever your part is in it. And as opposed to, well, you're half responsible and I'm half responsible.
Yeah.
Remember, I think we've talked about before that if we each take 100% responsibility, there is a path through.
Yeah.
Right? If you can take responsibility for your involvement or how you have participated in the relationship, that actually leaves space for the other person to go, all right, they're not blaming me. I'm not having to defend myself. How have I participated in this? And whether or not they do or not, I think it's important for you as an individual to just take 100% responsibility for your place in it.
Yeah.
It doesn't mean that you are forgiving every wrong that has happened, but you're taking responsibility for your part. That actually can leave space for the other person.
It's a difficult place because, you could have this conversation in your head, like, I'm afraid to be vulnerable in this space, because if I say this, they're going to use it against me. So I
get that.
Yeah. Like, then you're going to go back and forth competing for,
they're going to say, oh, remember you said it was your fault.
Yeah.
Okay. That's not what I meant totally, but okay. I can see how that was my fault. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. I would say stay with the I statements for sure. That making it about them is not the way through. You're not going to get peace with that. You're not coming with compassion. And in the, with the positive intention, softening the tone, some of the examples he gives are really good. And so for those of you listening, you're like, I don't know, how am I going to speak like this? I think in fact in the show notes I'm going to try and include these statements just to kind of give people a scaffolding if they're having to have a difficult conversation.
Yeah.
So one of them is expressing appreciation and positive intent. So an example can be, I really appreciate the time we've spent together, and I want to make sure we're both in a place of respect as we move forward. Right? So I feel like that's a neutral statement.
Yeah.
Another one is stating your needs clearly and directly. So, really concise. I need some time to focus on myself, so I'd like us to limit contact for a while. This doesn't change my respect for you. It's just what I need to feel balanced.
That's really that, man. It doesn't put me on the defensiveness. It's just clearly stating what you need.
Clearly and directly. Soften startup. I want to talk about how we're moving forward and how we can make this transition easier for both of us. Is this a good time to discuss it?
Yeah, timing is key. So giving the other person some time to pull in that question and making sure they're prepared and that they don't feel kind of
like
cornered.
You're putting them on the spot.
Or making them defensive. It's got to be, sometimes going for a walk where both people are moving.
Yeah.
Something like that. You got to be careful with that because, having a conversation in passing where you're not focused on each other can be difficult. But I think going for a walk in nature kind of a thing and having a talk.
Yeah. Intentionally going on that walk in order to have this talk.
Yeah.
Yeah. Not just, hey, so while we're out here at the park, blah, 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 blah.
Yeah.
The other one is focusing on solutions and not criticism. So I think that also goes back to the I versus you statements. But the example they give is to make this separation smooth, I think it's best if we each take some time to process independently. How does that feel to you?
Yeah, you got to really put a focus on moving forward rather than rehashing old problems,
Yeah, I like the how does that feel to you, like checking in with them. How does that feel to you? And that's opening space for feedback.
And that's a conversation.
Yes. Yeah.
Because there's a big difference between conversation and argument. The second that it moves from a conversation of questioning and being open like this, like the question you asked, if it moves into an argument, then you just have a power struggle.
Yep.
And you're rehashing old things.
Yeah. Or you're trying to be right about something instead of just opening up the conversation to hear the other perspective.
Yeah.
The other one is, and we've talked about this before, is validating their perspective. So that is, even if you don't, fully agree, it's just acknowledging the other person's feelings. And that prevents the escalation and can foster empathy.
Yeah.
And we've talked about that often with the circling method.
Yeah. Not acknowledging people's feelings is probably one of the most hurtful things you can do.
Yeah. Yeah. And, one of the main things we want as humans is to feel seen and heard.
Yeah, I think it goes towards that value system, about sometimes I can feel as if I'm saying something that's important to me and they're not acknowledging it, it's letting me know that what's important to me is not important to them.
Or it's conveying the message that it isn't just by not intentionally acknowledging that I just heard you.
Yeah.
Because maybe your perception, if I didn't say that I understood and I heard, and is that what you said, can be, you don't even care. Yeah. This is not important to you. That might not be true. But if there's a way for us to intentionally communicate, and by this example is to say, I understand what you said, or is this what you said? What I heard is this. Is that right? And being able to, let them know you've received the message and sort of repeat it back and affirm that that's what you heard.
Yeah.
I mean, I think in some ways we underestimate how valuable that is to us as individuals in saying something and being like, yeah, that's what I said. Because then there isn't any misconception like, I don't value what you said.
Yeah.
As I'm telling you, is that what you said? Hey, I may not value what you said, but at least I heard you.
Yeah.
Or I may not agree with you, but at least that I heard you. And the last one is offering reassurance and reaffirming respect. So especially where boundaries are being set, just offering reassurance that it can help maintain that sense of dignity and mutual understanding. So The example is, please know that my decision to step back doesn't change the respect I have for what we shared. That's hard. But, sometimes just having like an example statement is like, here's my scaffolding for this statement. This is what I want to convey. How can I say it in the way that is coming from me? But I like these examples because these are something that when I was moving through that process, maybe with Armando, some of these would have been really helpful to just be able to have conversation starters or enders.
Well, because we weren't taught these types of communication skills.
No.
So having this type of scaffolding, like you said, is important to kind of set that structure.
Yeah.
And maybe even before you have the conversation, do some writing.
Yeah.
Journaling, writing about what your intentions are, have the conversation on paper first without any intention of even giving it to them. Because I find myself having the rough draft at first, and it's way too, it doesn't have
Charged.
as many I statements as a lot of you. And I'm just venting at that point. And then I'm able to whittle down and go, what's important to me here? Like, what battle am I trying to fight? What am I fighting for? And how can I do this in a way that maintains respect and grace for both of us, that in a way that's fair for both of us?
You know what I like about what you just said is, we've talked about alignment a lot in the past, thoughts, words, and actions lining up with whatever it is your goal is.
Okay.
And let's say that somebody had the goal that, this relationship is going to come to an end. And what I want to feel is this. I want them to feel heard. I want them to feel respected. I want them to feel that I'm doing this with compassion. I want myself to feel that I've been able to express fully and authentically. That's what I want at the top, right? Or whatever that is for you. I want my child to feel safe in the presence of both of their parents.
Okay.
Okay, something like that. Whatever the alignment.
Finding the motivation to move into this conscious uncoupling space.
What is it that you want, right, to feel? And then thoughts, words, actions need to line up with that. If the thoughts that you're having are not lining up with that, that's not the thought road you want to go down.
Yeah.
If the words that you're using are not leading you to that alignment of that goal,
they're not for you.
That's not what you're doing. Yeah. If the actions that you're taking are not leading to whatever that goal was that you had for yourself, then those are not it. It's starting to redefine what are my thoughts, words, and actions that are going to line up with this overall goal of how I want this relationship to be honored or to, move forward. So I think I like that. I think that's, alignment is something you can use pretty much on anything, but especially for something like this, these things all kind of they hold hands with it,
Yeah.
So as we wrap up, respect and release, those are going to be the things to remember. It's a way to honor what was shared while allowing both people to grow. And the endings don't have to be painful. They can be transformative,
Yeah.
Anything else? What about you? Do you have anything else you want to say?
No, I just think that just keeping in mind that moving into a conscious uncoupling space doesn't mean that's the end, because you're a key example of that. You're the only example of anybody who's done conscious uncoupling that I know of. And the way that you guys move through it, should give a lot of people hope that it may be an end to that current relationship, but it without that end, there's no room
for a beginning
of a new relationship that honors both of you more respectfully.
Yeah. I think one thing I want to mention too is the importance of self-care and forgiveness for yourself, especially, in moving through transitions with relationships, is really forgiving yourself for whatever judgment you're giving yourself on why this happened or didn't happen, and forgiveness for the other person. We're only human. We're souls on a journey, and for some reason we've chosen to do this journey together, but it doesn't always end up the way that you expect it to. Yeah. And to be open to that. But self-care is a very important piece of that, remembering to feel all your feelings, to not run from them, because then you're just deferring payment, and to harvest, like I said, harvest all of the lessons, harvest everything that relationship brought you, the learning it brought you, the love, and honoring all of that. But at the same time, don't forget to care for yourself and love yourself. That's a big, big piece. And the call to action on this is just, for those listening is to take a moment and reflect on your relationships, the relationships in your life that might benefit from evolving, and consider what changes or boundaries would bring you closer to peace and to growth.
All right, that's been another episode of Let That Shift Go podcast. I'm Noel.
And I'm Lena. Let us know what your questions are, and we'd love to use them on a future episode. Or check us out on Insta at Let That Shift Go, or visit our website, serenitycovetemecula.com.